各位观众大家好，今天是2月16号，应该是年初5吧，礼拜5是周初一、初2、初3、初4，今天年初4啊，年初5，今天周2了。那么平时都是周一，因为昨天是 Bc 省的 Family Day， 因为日期比较重要，现在的是关键的时候，所以他们就照例没有按照照例，就是不开了。那么他们把昨天的会呢就挪到今天开。说实话，就算是大家这个3天里边，一个是 BC Family Day， 第二个是Lunar New Year 啊，他们一般说是 Lunar New Year， 农历新年。因为我们也可以说中国新年，但是呢很多东南亚的朋友，比如说韩裔啊、日裔啊、越南裔啊，他们不叫中国新年，所以我们还是尊重本地多元化，所以叫 Lunar New Year LNY 啊 Lunar New Year， 那么也就是农历新年，所以又有农历新年，又有这个Family Day 的长周末，所以他们格外重视。但是呢，我认为呢，就是你这个3天放松，这个结果至少要到1个周10天以后才能反馈出来。那么今天呢，应该说是上个礼拜 Super Bowl 呢，我们中国人球迷不多啊。那么在美国呢，这个是很重要的一个类似于节日，但是更多呢是商业气氛，大家会谈论这个 Super Bowl 的今天的这个当中休息的时候是谁来今天的这个广告商是谁？今年的广告商最大的广告商是谁？每年的广告业的创意、最佳的创意、最佳的广告，都是在这个 Super Bowl 的时候，大家都能看见 Super Bowl。那么超级碗中文，今年不一样了。上个礼拜，那么我们加拿大也有很多的足球迷美式足球迷，所以都在家里边观看。也2位官员Andrew Dix 卫生厅厅长以及我们的首席医官 Bonnie Harry 一再告诫大家不要到酒吧去看了，好吧，求求你们了，不要到酒吧去看了，就是这个原因。正好1个礼拜了。那么我再说一下 Super Bowl 呢是美国的他们来了每年2月份的第一个周日好。
Good afternoon. My name is Adrian Dix. I'm BC's Minister of Health.
是卫生厅厅长 Andrew Dix.
Health Officer. This is the
后面的是
COVID-19 briefing
Dr. Bonnie Harry， 我们的首席医官。
February the 16th. We'll be providing written briefings
明天是书面
tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, and then we'll be providing in-person briefing
礼拜4还是回来
on Thursday, in addition to
礼拜5还是回来
the regular briefing on long-term care home and assisted living
礼拜4呢是关于长期护理院的一些信息给大家包括他们的这个免疫疫苗等等。
Recognizing that we're on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations.
有一位网友说
Dr. Bonnie
相信高高低低，的确是这样，但总体我们看还是缓慢下降。
Thank you and good afternoon.
今天关键的3天的数据来了。
Today being the Tuesday after a long weekend, we have 4 periods to
4个阶
report
段
on today. Between Friday and Saturday, we had 452 new cases of COVID-19 diagnosed in British Columbia. From Saturday to Sunday, an additional 431 new cases.
431个周6到周日。
Between Sunday and Monday, 348.
348周日到周一。
In the last 24 hours, we've had an additional 302 new cases.
302个昨天到今天。
That is a total of 1,533 new cases diagnosed over the long weekend. 6 of them were epidemiologically linked.
包括6例
And that brings our total number of people diagnosed with COVID-19 to 74,283 in British Columbia.
74283例。
Of the new cases, 392 are people who reside in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region. 856 are people in Fraser Health Region. 58 people reside on Vancouver Island. 92 are in the Interior Health Region. And 135 people were diagnosed in the Northern Health Region. We now have 4,189 active cases in all health authorities in British Columbia, of whom 231 people are in hospital, 74 of whom are in
重症监护多
critical
了
care or
74个
ICU.
啊。
And an additional 7,136 people are under active public health monitoring, and 68,700
68,000多已经痊愈了。
recovered. Over this past 4 days, we've had another 26 people
26例死亡
across British Columbia who've died from COVID-19,
，4天。
bringing the total number of people to 1,314. As always, we know this is such a
1314例了，
challenging
目
and
前
difficult time
与
for
新冠
families,
相关
for
的死亡
caregivers, and for communities
啊
to lose
那么
loved
也是
ones
这个
to
都
this
是对
virus.
社区
And
对
our
家庭是损
condolences are
失
with you, and our
啊，
thoughts
这
are
个
with
每
you
一个
today.
生命都是珍贵的
We have 3 new healthcare outbreaks to
啊，又
report
有3
today
个新的
at
爆发
Eden Gardens, at Wexford Creek, and at
啊
Shaughnessy
，Eaton
Care
Garden
Centre.
啊，什么 Wexford
As well, we
Care
have 3
Center，
outbreaks that have been declared
那么
over
还有3个
at
呢已经
Heritage
宣布
Square,
结束
at Concord by the Sea, and Holy Family Hospital.
都是
So we now have 15 active
15
outbreaks in
个
long-term care and assisted living, and 6 in acute care
啊
units.
，15个养老院和6个急症性诊疗所
561
是显著下降，
residents and
显著下降，
339
的确，感谢主，显著下降。
In the community, we've had an additional outbreak declared at
啊，又有一
Timothy
个是
Christian
社区
School
基发
in
已经宣布
Chilliwack,
结束啊，
and
在
we've had
基利瓦格
an
的
outbreak
学
as
校
well at
已经宣
SFU
布结束
Childcare
啊，
Society.
还是一个儿童护理中心
Fraser Health is
是菲沙
involved
卫生
with
局下的啊，
investigating
因
and
为菲沙
managing
卫生
both
局
of
管的
those.
很多人很多地方。
An update today on our variants of concern. To date, we've had a total of 60 people who've been infected with variants of concern.
哦
That's 40
60
of
个
the
了啊，
B117 associated with
40
the
个是英国
UK, 19 people who've been
19 个
diagnosed
是
with
南
the
非
B1351 variant. That's originally associated with South Africa, and 1 person, as I mentioned last week,
啊，上
who
礼拜
has
说
the
过有一个
B1.525 variant that's been first detected in Nigeria.
啊，是
When
尼日利亚
we talked about
变
it
异
last
体
week, it，was
一例
one
尼日利亚
that
变异
was
体
called a
啊，
variant
它是尼日
under
利亚过来的
investigation, as
啊，
the,
40
they
个
were
是英
still
国变例
discussing
，19个是南
nationally
非
and，
一共是
internationally
60个。
whether there were some of the changes, the
啊
mutations that
我们
this
现在都
variant
在
had that might
都在
confer
积极的
an
跟踪调
advantage
查
in terms of
啊，
transmission.
都是一些变异病毒。
And as of today, it has been noted as a variant of concern because of some of the mutations that are involved.
接下来
Since
该
the
读
start of our immunization
疫
program,
苗了。
we're now up to 171,755 doses of a vaccine that have been administered in BC, and 22,914 of those are people who received a second dose as well. As we know, the past couple of weeks have been very limited in terms of supply, and we're really pleased
已
to
经
say that this week,
17,755 例是疫苗，其中22,000多是第二剂了。
will be arriving in the coming days.
好
There has，
那
been
么
some
接下来的辉
short
瑞会很
delays
高，马
because
上
of
就会
weather
来大
both
批
in
量
the
的
United
来
States and，
所以
across
希望大
Canada.
家稍
But
微
this
有一点
is
点延迟，
encouraging.
因为
Our
天气的问
supply
题啊，
still remains
包括美
somewhat
国以
limited,
及
and
加
we
拿大
need to
都
continue
这
to
个
build up our
天气
program
环境因
as
素
more
导致
supply
了
comes
这
in
个
and we have
现
more
在到货有点
stability
延
in the
迟
arrival of，
但
the
是
vaccine
我们
over
还
the
是表示
coming
乐观，
couple
因
of
为现在
weeks
供
and
货
into
量会
March.
很稳定，接下
We
来
are
的几个礼
focused
拜。
really on providing the second doses,
所以我们现在也
particularly
是
to
会
those
给
people who
第
are
二
at
剂
highest
第二针
risk,
的人
which are
及时
our
及时安
residents
打
and
啊
seniors in
按
long-term
时
care.
的施打。
I know that many people have had questions about
我也知道很多人
what deferring
有
the second
关于
dose
这
for
个
a
第二剂
period
第二
of time
针
may
啊
mean for how well the
这
vaccine
个
works,
如
or
何
vaccine
保持
effectiveness.
第一针有效剂，第二针到底多少时间打，多久能才能打？所以我们也是积极观察、认真仔细的、小心谨慎的我们也在看全球各个，特别是英国、以色列他们的收集的数据，包括我们加拿大 其他省份特别是一些长期护理院、老年院，他们的这些数据，我们已经看到了这些数据。加拿大的魁北克特别是也有一些这个世界卫生组织给的一些事例。那么第一针打完之后的继续的第二针我们第二针叫 booster dose 没有什么这个负面的冲击所以说因为第一针打完之后身体里边的抗体是慢慢起来的慢慢建立起来的所以也是会持续一段时间但是这个可能会是有点影响我们现在还不是很清楚这个疫苗这个抗体是如何建立起来的但是呢这个是要一个长期的建立保护的话是要打第二针因为我们身体里边有两种抗体一种是本身的第二种就是我们就是我们疫苗打的之后的抗体引起的抗体是使得这个很多的病毒的这个蛋白质破坏
And that is
然后
what
让
we
我们
see
身体
first.
里
We
边
see
能
these
够复制这
antibodies
些抗
increase
体
over a period of days
对
to
这个病
weeks
毒的抵
after
御
we're immunized. It's one of the things that we can measure most easily because we can measure what we call
所以我们也是这
neutralizing
个
antibodies,
可
or
以
the
去测
antibodies
量
that
去
actually
控制
affect that spike protein in the blood. And it's something
这
that
个
we
是血液里边
know
的抗体
is
的
a
浓度
marker
我们也
of
是能
how
够看得
well
见的
we are protected from infection. But there's also a part of our immune system called the cellular immune system. So these are things that are cells that are in our blood and what are called B cells and T cells. And these
我们
are
也可以
cells
说
that
T
live
细
in our
胞
lymph
B
node
细
and in
胞
our
这
blood
里边的
system.
我们血
And
液
they
里
take
边的
time to fully
这个
develop.
都是需
And
要
they
时间
also
来
modify
自我
and
调
they
整
react
根据身体
to
里边
the
的
things like
抗体的
the
浓度
protein on the outside
然
of the
后建立
virus.
起自
And
己
it's
本
these
身
cells
的
that
这
take
个
longer to build
蛋
up
白
but
质
are
来
longer lasting as well. The memory of
他们
these,
自己也有记忆
these
体
antigens
能
in
够使得身体
the
能
T
够建
cells
立
and B
起
cells,
这个
our
对病毒的
cell-mediated
抗
immunity
体
is what
保护
protects us over the long term. And we know from immunology, we know
那么
from
通过
other
免疫
vaccine
学通
programs
过
that
免疫
having
学
a
通过
longer
其他
interval
的疫
between
苗
your
我们也
priming
知道
dose
这个
and your booster dose
这个
allows
一
those
针打
cells
完之
to
后
develop as
到
well.
建立起抗
And
体的这
maybe
个
the
时
reason
间
why we have a more longer
所以
lasting
我们现在也是
benefit
觉得
if
第
we
一
have
针和
a
第二针
longer
时间
gap
长一点
between
点
the
那问
first
题不大
and
没有
the
这个
second
负面
dose.
的作用
It is still too early for us to know
那么
how
当然了
long
现在还
this
是太早
initial
期来预
immunity
言
lasts
到
in
底
people.
是第一
But we
针和
do
第二
know
针
that the
有
current
多少
vaccines are
能够
very
科学
effective.
但是
And
我
the
们
data
知道
from
第
around
一
the
针和
world
第二针之
shows
间
us
的这个有
that
效率
this
这个全世
protection
界都
does
一样
last
都
for
是
many
看到
weeks.
了
Here
这
in
个
BC, we've
第一
been
针打完之
monitoring
后至
residents
少
of
有几
long-term
个礼
care
拜
homes
是没有问
and have
题
been
的
connecting
所以
them
我
to
们现
people
在
who
也是都在监测
have
打过
developed
疫苗的
COVID-19.
居民他们身
And
体
what
里
we've
边
seen
如
is
何
that in the 3
建立
weeks
起发展
after
对
the
这个病毒的
initial
抗体
vaccine and long-term care residents, the protective effect of the virus is 89%,
那么我们自
almost
己呢对
90%.
养老
So
院的
that
老
is
人呢
really good
3
news for all of
周
us.
以后第一针
And
打
it
完3
supports the
3
fact
周
that
以
we
后
have
他们
good
的有效率
protection
到
even after a
89%
single
到
dose.
90%这个
As
是
a
很好的
scientist
消
and
息
somebody who's
这个第
worked
一
in
针
the
3
field
周以
of
后就有这个效果
vaccines for quite a long time,
这个
this
是
is actually incredibly exciting and
所以这个也
positive
是令人
news
振
that we
奋的
have
消
this
息
very high
这个是
level
我
of
们 BC 省
protection
的自
in
己的一
seniors
个
here in BC
调查的结
from
果
this first dose of
这
the
个是第一
vaccine.
针人
And
体
we
里
do
边就有
know
这么
that
高
these
的抗
immediate
体水
and
平
positive results are
所以这个也是很
something
积
that
极
we
正
rarely
面的
see with vaccine
效果
programs. And it is good for as long as
所以这个也是很
several
好的
weeks
就
to
是
months.
可能
So while
会
it is
1个多
important
月
to
2
get
个月
that
里边
second
都是
dose,
这么好
and we will be
那么所以这
focusing
样的
on
话
doing that,
第二针
especially in people who
慢
are
慢
most
打
at risk.
也问题不是
We
很
are
大
reassured
我
that
们也是再次
delaying
确认
that
了
for weeks, even to
可
months.
能是
And in the
拖延
UK
1个月
and
或者是
in
到2个
Quebec,
月
they're looking at
包
90
括
days
英
or
国
3 months
包
for
括
the
魁北
second
克
dose.
他们
We
90
know
天
we
都
have a
有
buffer
都
where
没有
we
问
can
题这个
safely
我们叫缓冲期
delay the
buffer
second dose if
英文
needed
叫
to
buffer
make
就
sure
是
that
缓冲
our
阶段
operational issues, that enough vaccine comes to be able to provide
所以
those
现在
second
因为
doses.
现在
So
疫
that's
苗
what
也
we'll be
来了，所以
focusing
大家
on,
更
and we'll
放
be
心定心
monitoring
丸
very
今
carefully
天我
so
们
that
这
we
个也
can
是
tell if we start to see a
学到了一
decrease
个
in
一组数
protection
据，就
effects.
是我们长期护理院的老人第
The
一
other
针
thing
打
that we
完
have
3
learned,
周
of
以后
course,，throughout
身体里
our
的抗
pandemic
体
here in
的
BC
对病
is
毒
that
的
the
有效率
tide
达
can
到
turn quickly.
89%到
And
90%。
that successes that we have had in getting our transmission down and
那
preventing
么他也是
outbreaks
说到了我
can
们
also
BC
be
省自
washed away
从
quickly.
全球流行
While
病
the
以后
overall number of new
这个
cases has slowly been coming down
慢
and
慢
is
慢慢
lower
的
than
现
it was
在
a few
慢
weeks
慢下
ago,
降了
it is still very high in terms much higher than we want it to be.
但是现在
And
的
we
这
are
个
also
每
once
天新
again
增感染
seeing
率还是很
increases
高
in some
这
regions
个
more
特
than
别是有
others.
些地方是这样
Particularly, we've seen cases start to stabilize as the outbreaks have been settling down in the
那
interior.
么
We're
特别
still
是内陆
having
地区
challenging
呢开
times,
始
of
下
course,
降
in the
了，但
north
是
in
我
many
们还会
communities.
有很困难
But
的
on
时
the
期
island as well,
那么
things
包
are
括岛
starting
上
to be managed.
那么所以希望能
But
够
we are very
控制
concerned that
住
in some of our higher population areas,
特别是
particularly
那
in
个高密
the
度地
Fraser
区
Health
的，
region
特别
and
是菲
Vancouver
沙
Coastal
地
Health
区和
region,
沿岸
we're
卫生地
starting to
区
see an uptick. And what we see in terms of cases today reflects what has
我们
happened
今天看到
as
的新
long
增
as
的
2
数据
weeks
都
ago.
是2星期
So
前
what
的
we
行
started
为
to see in
反
the
映出来
last
的结
week
果，
is
所
the
以上个礼
7-day
拜的
rolling average
大
of the
家的行
numbers
为
of cases
都
has
是
started
会
to creep up,
可能会还会上
particularly
升
in Fraser Health.
过去2个礼
The
拜
percent
过去
positive,
今
so
后
the
的2个
number
礼
of
拜，
cases
特
that
别是
we
菲沙
have,
地区
the
看到
number of people who've been tested and the percent who test positive, and the 7-day rolling average of that also is ticking up, particularly in Fraser Health.
特别是
And the
菲
third
沙
thing that
我
we
们这个
monitor
7
for,
天平均数
that
字
we
又有一
present
点
in
往
our
上走
modeling
的趋
data
势
is that
趋
reproductive
势
number.
所以我
And
们
we
要
want it to
还
be
是要不
consistently
断的
below 1,
这个
and
监
as far
控
below 1 as we
所
can
以希
get
望
it,
大家
because
能
that
够
is our
把
buffer.
自
So
己
that
的这个
means
社
how
交
many
圈再
people
找
it
小一
on
点
average is a single case transmitting to.
那么
And
现
if
在
it's
呢还
above
是一例
1,
传一
we
例
know that that means growth can happen
如
very
果一
quickly.
例传
And last
一例
week
以
we
上
started to
那
see
么
this
慢
rise
慢又
above
会
1
传
in
播的
some
人又
regions
多
of
了
the
新增案例
province,
的
particularly in the Fraser Health
特别
region.
是菲沙地区
We know that when
已经有点
we
上升
start
的趋势
to have transmission from multiple people to multiple people,
那
it
么现在
grows
最可
what we
怕的
call
就是很多人传
exponentially.
很多人
So that means if I pass it on to
如
2
果
people,
我一个
each
人
of
传
them
2个人
passes it
那么
on to
另
2
外2个
people
人传
very
2个人传
quickly.
2个人
We
那么
get
就
to
会
4,
传
we
播
get
速
to
度很快
16,
从
we get
1
to
到2到
256 within
4
2
4到
generations.
16
So
到
these are the
32
things that
那
we
么这
need
样
to
的话
pay
就会
attention to
所以这
now.
个是我们
While the
现在是
numbers
最
seem
越
like
注
they're
意的
reasonable, the fact that we're seeing an increase in the reproductive number means that we're not having those safe interactions as much
所以我
as
们
we
现在
need
看
to
到的这么
be.
多
We
的数
need
字
to
说明
reduce
我
the
们还远没
transmission
到了安
events
全的阶
that are
段
happening in our
这个传播
community.
还是在发
Once
生我
we
们社
start
区里
to
边
see
还是在发生
increases, they rise
社
very
区
quickly,
传染
and then we go back to playing catch up again.
所以我们又要
Because
回
the
到
long
之
incubation
前那么
period,
回来
2 weeks, what we
所以我
do
们一定要记
today
住就是2
affects
星
what's
期
going to
我们
happen
现在
next
的
week
行为
and
都
the
是要
week
2星期
after.
以后才能
So it's
反
often,
映出来这个
once
结
we
果
start to play catch up, it takes much longer to get the numbers
所以
back
这
down.
个一定要
We
慢
know
慢
it
小
doesn't
心
take much for
现
this
在
spread
因为是
to
2
get
星
out of
期的一个
control,
周期
which is
所以
why
大家一定要耐
everything
心而
that
且是
we
要
do
花更长的时间让
individually
这个病
makes a difference collectively.
曲线能够往
If
下
you
走
have symptoms of
如
COVID-19,
果我们有
you
新
must
冠的这
stay
个
home
症状请大家
to
还是
stay
待在
away
家
from
里
others
远
and
离人
arrange to
群
get tested.
然后呢安
For
排测试
employers,
那么
if
对这
people
个
who
雇主
work
来
for
讲
you
如
are
果
ill,
雇员
you need to support
来上
them
班
to stay home.
你们需要
This is
给你们
important
需要
not
他们
just on
支
an
持他们待
individual
在家
basis,
里
but means that your business is protected as
因为
well.
同时呢你的
This is
生意也
not
会受
just
到
a
保护
lower mainland issue.
这个不单单是
We've
我们
seen
低
this
陆平
before
原
too,
的
where
这
it
个
starts
问
in the
题
higher population
特别
areas,
还
but
有
we
一些
know
这
that
个
we
其他
still
的地方也
move
是这
for
样
various reasons, and it can spread widely way around the province
特别
very
是
quickly.
因为这样上班
We
的
have to
传播
remember
也是
that
特别
today's
快，
new
全省都是
cases
这样。
are the result of our
所以
actions
请
as
大家
long as
记
2
住
weeks ago.
我们现在所有的
But
新
what's
政的
more
速度都
important
是2星期
is
前的
that
行为的
what
结
each
果
of us does
这个是很重要
today
的。所以
is
每个
what
人
is
从
going
现
to
在开
determine
始
our
马
future.
上行动起
The
来。
precautions we take today
如
will
果我们
define
从
how
现
we
在开
fare
始
2
就
weeks
足
from
以
now.
足够引起了
And
重
what we
视
do
那么
makes a
我们2个礼
difference.
拜以后这
We
个
have
就会不
seen
一样。
that even small social
所以
gatherings
就算
can
大
spread
家很少的
spread
人聚集
exponentially
都
when
会传播
people
病毒。
go from that small games night that you had together to spreading to schools, spreading to
有可能
workplaces,
你会传到
spreading
学校
to
里边去，你也可以传播到
other
上班的同事那边去
settings.
或者在
We
其他的
need
环
to
境里
stay
面
the
传播。
course
所以
with keeping our numbers small,
所以我们希望
keeping
还
our
是大家
interactions with others
社交
safe.
的层面
And that
人
means
数少
staying
一
away
点
if we're ill,
尽量避免
covering
社
our
交
mouth when we
大家
cough,
这个保持社
keeping
交
our
距
safe
离。
distance,
如果你生
wearing
病
our
就
masks
是
and cleaning our
远
hands.
离人群。
Continuing to follow
如
our
果不
public
能够
health
保持
restrictions
安全
and
距离，
guidance
请
that we
戴
have
口
right
罩。
now is what
请
will
遵
lead
照
us
我们
into
的
the spring,
卫生
even
条例。
as we get our vaccination
就
programs
算是
back
我
up
们
and
现
running
在
at full
疫苗
speed once
恢
again.
复供应，而且疫苗开始施打，
So this
还
is
是希望大
a
家
week that's
能
near
够
and dear
小
to
心。
my heart. It
这个也是
is
我发自内心的跟大家
what's
说。
known as the Random Act of Kindness Week. And I implore all of you to remember this as we get through this phase of our pandemic
所以希望
together,
大家
and
能
to
够
remember
能
that
够
kindness
安全
is
的度
something
过
that
这
is
个
infectious
安
as well.
全的度
And I
过这
remind you
个
all
全球流行
to
病
be。kind, to be
希望
calm,
我也
and to be
是
safe.
不断的提醒大家，不断的提醒大家be kind, be calm, be safe， 就是安心、容让。以及这个
Thank you
安
very
全。
much, Dr.
那
Henry.
么
I
也
wanted
谢
to
谢
start by
我们的首席医官 Bonnie
passing on my
Henry。
condolences,
我
those
是
of the
以
Premier,
及代表
those
省
of
长和我本
government,
人
those of all people in
能
BC,
够本
to
省
the
我们
families,
BC
friends,
省
and
政府
caregivers of the
对
26
过去
people who
4
passed away
天
this
死
weekend
亡
in this
26
quarantine
人的
period
家庭
from
和朋友
COVID-19, 10 from
以及
Friday
这
to
个
Saturday, 5 from Saturday
护
to
理机
Sunday,
构的工作人员
7
表
from
示
Sunday
诚
to
挚的哀
Monday,
悼
and 4 from Monday to today. This is an extraordinarily
他是
difficult
把
time to
26
grieve,
例呢
and we're
礼拜
thinking
5
of
到
all
礼
of
拜
you,
6死了几例，在
and
具体
you are
分
in
布
our
分一下
hearts today,
breakdown。
and
我
knowing
刚才
the
因为在说
challenges
没有
that
完全
this
听清
period
是
of
好像有一
pandemic
天是
has
10个
put
昨天到
everybody
今天是
in.
5例。
To have such a thing occur in your family or in your circle of friends is very difficult indeed. Wanted to note in terms of acute care hospitals that we continue to see a fairly stable situation with respect to available beds, about 88.7%.
Bonnie 也说了
About
我再给大家总结一
88.7%
下
of beds are currently occupied in the
到
healthcare
周一是
system, approximately
348周一到周二
1,090
302
regular
例，但
beds,
我不
base
认为这
beds.
个是下降的
70.4%
趋
if
势
you add our surge beds
他
in
说
are
了
occupied
也
across the
是
system.
这
That's
个菲沙卫生局
3,531
现在
available
这个 RT 值
base and surge
一例
beds
传
in
一例
ICU. Our
又有点
occupancy rate
往
is
上走了，一例可能
73.5%,
传
which means
1.1例
141 beds.
这个是可
The
怕的
base
事
beds
情
are available.
那么卫生厅长也是给大家
51.7%,
汇
and you
报
have the surge
这
critical care
个
beds
病床占用率的
that have
情
been put
况
in place for
我也不多啰嗦
367
基本上
available
50%
beds. I
几
wanted to note
60%
the
几
continued
还
efforts
是
of
比
the
较安
influenza
全的
vaccine
范围
campaign. As you know,
我
there's
们的医
little
疗资
evidence
源没
at
有
the moment of community
这
circulation
个
of
击
influenza.
垮。那
Our
么
influenza
重症
testing
监护呢
continues
又
at
回到了
elevated
70例
levels.
我
As
记得
of
上星期是60几
February
例
15th,
这
we
个
know
还
that
是
at least
有警惕的住院人数呢显著下降
1,455,412
减少了100多个人
vaccine have been administered to British Columbians. I just want to note of those, 1,062,970 have been delivered by pharmacists, which is an increase from 724,000 for the same period last year, so an increase of approximately 338,000 doses delivered by pharmacists. Pharmacists have played a central role, more so than ever, in our influenza vaccine campaign this year, and we are very appreciative of that role, and we know that pharmacists are going to play a critical role as we deal with immunizations in the months to come. I wanted to also note, as Dr. Henry said, that 171,755 doses of influenza have been delivered. Just to put that in context in terms of some important sectors, that's amongst long-term care residents, that's 27,483 first doses and 4,057 second doses. In terms of long-term care staff, that's 35,471 first doses and 12,079 second doses. In terms of assisted living staff, that's 9,634 residents, I should say, 9,634 doses and 217 second doses. And amongst assisted living staff, 4,830 first doses and 631 second doses. 4,826 essential visitors in long-term care have also received their first doses, as well as 879 people who are effectively in acute care hospitals but waiting for a long-term care bed. So that reflected, if you reflect that against our targets, went through as we're in phase 1 of our immunization campaign. Obviously, those sectors have been well covered to date and will continue to be their high priority areas and high vulnerability areas. I want to note and express my appreciation to all of the teams, all of the public health teams, the health authority teams who are working on this immunization campaign. It has real fundamental challenges, not least of which is, of course, some of the interruptions in what was expected over the last few weeks and some inconsistency in when during a week doses arrive, which means sometimes planned immunization clinics have to be canceled. In spite of this, the professionalism of our team, I think our teams has been truly extraordinary, and we are appreciative. I want to end by just noting over the weekend I had the occasion to meet with a number of people both in Fraser Health and in Vancouver Coastal Health, where we've seen some increase in the number of cases, especially over the last 10 days, with healthcare professionals in Fraser Health, with young people in Fraser Health, with healthcare workers in Vancouver Coastal Health. This weekend, meeting with them virtually, and I think the message there is clear, that while our immunization campaign is getting back on track to the extent that we're going to receive more doses later this week from Pfizer, that by the end of March, our expectation is, the plan that has been presented to us by the federal government will see about 10% of British Columbians immunized. I know we've said this before, but it's important to note that by April 1st, about 10% of the population will be immunized if the vaccines come in as expected.
那么他也是说到了，就是就算是现在疫苗如果是按期到达的话，那么到了4月1号之前，我们省的10%的人口已经打过针了。
100% committed.
那么我们也是希望能够在这个按期保持，能够使得我们承诺能够维持，能够做到。那么也就是疫苗能够及时供应，能够及时到货。那么这样的话，我们在9月份之前，全省的人民都能够打上疫苗。
The people delivering our BC immunization plan are counting on us to stay 100% committed to stopping the spread.
这个大家听出来了吗？这个官员说话和卫生官、首席医官 Bonnie Henry 还是说话还是不一样的，还是不一样的，的确是不一样。不管是中国文化还是西方文化，这个还是不一样。当官的语气啊、用词啊，这个还是不一样。当然了，西方国家的这个官员的这个官威小得多啊，没有什么以上居下这个居上临下的这种态度没有的。但是这个说话的套路基本上还是一样。当然，这个民主国家和非民主国家还是有点区别。他们当官的相对来讲还是比较 humble 谦卑的。
Aujourd'hui, nous faisons le point sur le nombre de nouveaux cas pour 4 périodes de référence de 24 heures chacune. Il y a eu 26 nouveaux décès liés au Covid-19 durant ces périodes de référence. Nous offrons nos condoléances aux familles et aux amis des 1314 personnes décédées du Covid-19 et à tous ceux qui ont perdu des êtres chers au cours de cette pandémie. Pour la première période de référence, nous avons eu 452 nouveaux cas. Pour la deuxième période de référence, nous avons eu 431 nouveaux cas. Pour la troisième période de référence, nous avons eu 348 nouveaux cas. Au cours des dernières 24 heures, 302 nouveaux cas se sont ajoutés. Parmi l'ensemble des cas confirmés de COVID-19, 231 personnes sont actuellement hospitalisées, dont 74 en soins intensifs. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. We're happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. As a reminder to everybody on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You are limited to one question and one follow-up only. I would also ask that you please take your phones off mute. You are not audible until your name is called. First question is from Justine Hunter, Globe and Mail.
Thank you. Dr. Henry, the Chief Justice of the BC Supreme Court on Friday said that BC was putting the courts in an impossible position in asking for an injunction regarding those church gatherings. I'm wondering, are you planning to amend your orders so that police can arrest people for violations?
So
那
there's a
么
couple of
现在
things
是
in that.
对
One,
这个
this
教
is
堂的
before
聚
the
会
court,
崇
so
拜
I
活动
have to be
现
cautious
在
about
从
what
法
I
律
do
上
say.
有
I
挑
will
战
say that this
那么他说
injunction
你这个
was in
卫生命令
response
和法律
to
的有没有抵触他说这里边可能有几个
and
问
until that
题要
legal
澄清
challenge was heard, we wanted to make sure that people understood that the
所以他
rules
说
were
我们也
still
是要
in
确
place.
保每个人都能理解
Anyway,
我们的卫生命令
my ability
我的
to
能力我的职
under the
能
Public Health Act
是
to
公共卫
add
生
additional
再加上其他的一
measures
些
to the
措
orders.
施
I don't think
来发布这个
I'm
命
not
令
I'm not aware that I have that authority. Let's
我
put
不
it
认
that
为
way.
我有
And
这
we're
个
not
权
talking
利
about arresting people. What we're talking about in terms of
来
detention was
去
preventing
这
people
个
from
逮捕
entering
那
a
些违
premise,
反
for
禁令的
example.
人
And
或
so
者
that
是
is
拘
something
捕
that
那
is
些
under the
这个
Emergency
犯规者
Management Act part of
这个
the
不是
order.
我的
So
职责
these are
但
all
是我
things
的
that
职
the
责呢
legal
就
folk
是
are
应
working
对
out.
突发应
But I
急
do
状
think
况
it's important. My understanding
我
is
的理
that
解就是说我的工作
that
是
we needed to
我们需要
ensure that
确
people
保
realized
每
that
个
while the
人
court
都能够
challenge
意
that
识
the
到
church
我
has
们现
brought
在
was
所面
being
临的
heard,
挑战
that these rules still apply, and they apply for the reasons that we've put them in place based on the science and the evidence.
我们现
When
在
I
所做的
believe
任
there
何
is
决定都
risk
是
of
根据科
transmission,
学
and where we have
风
seen
险
transmission
以
in
及
these
这个
settings,
病毒的
that's
传
where the
播的
orders
事
apply.
实来做的我们的卫生
Do you
命
have a
令
follow-up, Justine?
Thank you. I just want to look back to the issue of booster shots for vaccines. Roughly 150,000 British Columbians have had their primer shot, if I read that
那么
correctly.
第二个问题也是
And I'm wondering
提到
if
了
you
第
have an
二
idea
针
of
的
how
问题
many
第二
people
针疫
will
苗的
make
问
it
题
in that 42-day window, and how many are likely to
我在
miss
想
that
42
window.
天
And I
这个
heard what you're
天
saying
气
about the 90 days
42
being a
天
possibility,
或
but
者我也
just
听
in
到了
terms of the
90
original
天
target of
是不
getting
是有
to
这种
42
可能
Yeah, you know, obviously
因
our,
为我们
our
现在还是
original
42 天
target
我
was
们
to try
本
and
本
do
省
it
本来是
within,
35天
you know, 35 days, but you know,
那
these
么
are
后来到了
operational
42天因为疫
considerations,
苗的
and
供应问
so it
题
depends a little bit on which vaccine people
那么
receive.
还是要
So the Pfizer
看我们
vaccine
第
we're
一针
starting
打的
to,
人
which
是
we
接
had
受到
more
了
of
什么疫
and
苗
will have more of.
有
Most
可能
people
有
are
些人
still
打
within
的
the
辉瑞有些
42
是打的
days
莫
and
德
he's
纳
starting to get second doses at day 42. We have some challenges with Moderna because the
我们
amount
现在
of
莫德纳的疫
Moderna,
苗还
it
是有
was
些
coming
困
in
难
every 3 weeks, and the
因为
amount that we're getting
每3个
next
星期
week
才到次货
is lower than expected. So there
所
will
以这
some
个
be
也
some
是
people,
拉低了
particularly
我们的预
who
期
receive the Moderna
所以
vaccine
那些
will
打
be
第一
delayed
针
for
是莫
another
德纳
week.
的那么
So
可
it's
能
in the
会要
range
延
of
迟第二针
4,000 to 6,000
这个
people
可能是
for
影响
both.
到
That will
4000
be
到6000人
started at longer than 42 days.
可能会超过
But
42
much
天
depends, of course, on
这
how
个是
much
还是要
Moderna comes in
等到
later
这个
in
疫苗来
March,
莫
and we
德纳
don't
的疫
have
苗
that
来可能
confirmed
3月
yet.
份
So it is a very challenging
这
thing.
个是
The
对我
one
们来
thing
讲是
I'm
很困难
confident of
但是我
is
很自信
the increasing data that
我们现
supports
在这
that
个
we have a
越来
very
越多的
strong
数据
and
来证
robust
明
immune
这
response to
个
the first
疫
dose
苗
that
的作
lasts
用
for
有
the
效
short
性
term. And
而
when we're
且在
talking
这个
short
短期
term,
里边
it is
强烈
definitely
的有效
in
期
the longer than 6 weeks,
可能
and
是
at least
超
out
过
to
了
3
6星
months.
期的
So I'm
防
not
护
concerned that we're going to
还可能到了
decrease our
3个
vaccine
月
effectiveness. I obviously
所以
want
我
to
不认
protect
为这个延
particularly
长
on
第二针
vulnerable
打会
people as
降
soon as
低
we
第一针
possibly
的有
can
效
with the
率
best protection we can.
Thank you. Next question is from Richard Zussman, Global News.
And Dr. Henry, considering how many people in long-term care, both staff and residents, have received the vaccine, how is it even possible that outbreaks are still happening and people
那
in
么他也
long-term
是说
care
到
are
了长期
still
护理
getting
院
sick
现
and
在
dying?
有居民和职员都
So
都收到
the
了
sad thing is that most of
疫
the
苗
deaths that
为
we've
什么现在
had in
还有爆
long-term
发
care are in outbreaks that started prior to the immunization
他
program
说这些
starting.
还是
And you must
发生
remember
疫
that
苗
we
发生
consider
爆
a
发的
single case
长期
of
护理
a
院都
staff
是
person
疫苗
with
之前
potential
发生的
exposures
就
or
是
a resident
那么
as
我们
being
所谓的
an
这个
outbreak.
爆发
So
只要
we
有
also
一例
know
就算爆
that
发
there's a period of time before your body develops enough antibodies to give you
那么
protection
打完了之后呢，身体里边还会有要有14天还是1天14天到21天，所以这个还是才会有抗体建立起来。
that critical period of time.
所以我们现在还远没有过了这个关键期。
But what we aren't seeing is the rapidly spreading outbreaks that we saw earlier on in November and into December prior to immunization. So, the protection that we're seeing is very robust after people their bodies have that opportunity to develop the response. So that takes a few weeks, and it's still building up, but we're getting there.
Richard, do you have a follow-up? Richard, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
The outbreak at the George Derby Center is still happening. It started, as you alluded to, some started before the vaccinations started. But how are we still seeing an outbreak in this facility? How has it gone on so long? And would rapid testing or PCR testing for staff not be advisable at this time to help deal with this ongoing outbreak?
Yeah, so it is the most challenging outbreak that we have, and sadly, the number of people who've died from COVID-19 has been very high in George Derby, and it's been exhausting and challenging for the families, for the caregivers, and for the residents in that facility. And unfortunately, the virus was quite widespread before immunization became available. In terms of testing, obviously in an outbreak, PCR, the more accurate testing is what we do, and it has been done regularly of staff and residents in George Derby, as we do with every outbreak. So there's, when we have an outbreak, when we know that there's a higher probability of people having the virus, whether they're symptomatic or not, we do systematic testing on a repeated basis with the PCR testing, with the rapid turnaround time. So that is being done in all of our long-term care outbreaks.
Catherine Garrett, MyPG Now.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. The WHO has been given the go-ahead by health officials on the prairies and south of the border in the Pacific Northwest to start their season. When do you anticipate BC to be given the green light, and what's been the delay on that?
I'm sorry, the WHO to start what?
他说世界卫生组织已经给了这个
WHO Western Hockey League.
WHO 不是 它不是 WHO 啊，他说错了，就是说北美冰球联盟只给了这个冰球的一些绿灯，有草原地区、草原省份啊，我们 BC 省什么时候啊能够来来回回让美国人过来打，让我们可以去美国打？那么可能是3月份到4月份。
No, thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Shannon Patterson, CTV.
From both Dr. Henry and Minister Dix. Washington State has already administered over 1 million vaccine doses, and we're only at 171,000 in the US.
打了第一针，打了那个疫苗。可能到4月份到5月份，几乎每一个人都能打了。到4月份、5月份，那么我这个厉害，我们为什么 BC 省为什么差这么远？他说这个消息看到了让人沮丧。
Canada has not been able to secure as much vaccine as other countries, thereby delaying our recovery.
I don't know if you can read frustration in my face, but of course we do. It is what it is. It doesn't make vaccine come any quicker to be upset or angry or mad about it. We're dealing the hand that we're playing the hand we were dealt, and we are committed to getting immunizations as fast into people's arms to protect people as we receive them, and we've been doing that very effectively so far. We now are very hopeful that once we've started to get supply on a regular basis, and Pfizer has committed to giving us increased doses between now and the end of March, we're also hopefully going to also receive increased doses from Moderna, and we know that there's more vaccine on the horizon. So come April, we understand that the shipments we're receiving from both of those vaccines will be increasing and moved up from where they were
BC 省能够控制的，也是联邦
to be received. So
所以小土
from
豆政
quarter
府
3
说
to
实话
quarter 2,
做得已经很好了
we are
但是呢
expecting,
这个自由党的这个
I qualify
说
everything
实话
because
就是
as
他
we
们
know
的
with a large global
本性
production
就
like
比较
this, there's
软
always
对什么
stance,
事情都
whether
比较
it's the
软
weather, whether
所
it's
以
the
呢
production
这个疫苗
facility,
的获
whether it's
得方面
access
也
to
不是那种
the
aggressive
supplies that
能
we
够
need, the
去
low
积
dead
极的
space
要货
syringes,
给
for
厂家
example.
各种各样
So
的
these
压
are
力
all
所以你
moving
看小小
parts
的以色
that are
列
changing
都差不多打
rapidly,
完了
and we're
今
trying
天
to
看到的一个
adapt
消
as
息
best
说
we
以色列的
can. We will
这个
be
整个国家的
starting
这个
our
新
mass
增的情
vaccination
况明
clinics
显好
for
转
our
所以大家
elders
一
and
定要对
seniors,
疫苗有信
starting in
心
March,
不管是国
and
产的
for
还是
most
国
of
外
us
的当然我
starting
们
in
现在不
April.
能
So
谈国产的
we'll
因为我们
do
现在在
what
国
we
外
can
但我
with
希望
as
人类
much vaccine
能够
as
通
we
过疫
receive
苗
as soon as
来
we
战
get
胜
it,
病
and that's
毒
what we're
现在
planning
看
to
来疫苗
continue
是
to
唯
plan.
一的一个办法
I mean, the short answer is, of course, yes. It would be desirable to get more vaccine every day, every person.
他说我们也
Because
希望
vaccinated
每
BC
天能
makes
够看
everyone
到
else
疫苗
safer
能
in
够到
BC.
货
So, we'd like to have more, and as you can tell, the vaccine that we have received, we've delivered into people's arms, and the results in long-term care have meant that
那么
since
现在
January
看来
15th,
长期
we've
护理
gone
院的
from
老年人
49
都
long-term
慢
care
慢
assisted
都能
living
够接
independent
到
living
了
outbreaks
那个
to I
打
believe
病毒
15
疫
today.
苗
So that's shows how effective
这
the
个也是
vaccine
看
can
到了
be,
这
and
个
where we have
疫
seen and
苗
continue
所
to
产
see
生
new
的效率
outbreaks,
这个也是
they've
很
been
明显的作
among
用
small numbers of people. So we know the vaccine is effective. We'd like to see more of it. Some of the reasons why there isn't domestic capacity to produce vaccines in Canada are well known. There's a debate about that from our past decisions that were made about this have affected us now. There's no question about that. But as Dr. Henry has said, we have to deal with the situation in
所
front
以
of
他也
us.
是
And
像
simply
伯尼医生
complaining
刚才也
about
说了
it is
我
not
们主要
sufficient.
面对的
Although,
还是疫
let's
苗
be
供
clear,
应
we
的
have
问
to make
题
sure,
我
I
们也要
think, as
每
a
个人
country,
我
and
们要确
Canada
保我
at
们
the
的国家
national
我
level
们
has to make
能
sure
够
that,
在国际上
that
的
this
这
situation
个
is dealt with in the future. But for right now, we have to take the vaccine we can and deliver it in
我
the
们
most
现在
effective
只能是
possible way to
有多少
protect
疫
the
苗我
most
们打
vulnerable
多少
first
疫
and
苗
then everybody
我
else.
们也是希
Would we
望
like
能
to have
够
more doses?
每
Absolutely.
个人都
Every
能够
single
打到
day
疫
we
苗
think
我
we'd
们也
like
是
to
希
have more
望看到
doses
每天
every week
能
and
够
every
每
month.
天都
But
有
we
疫
are
苗来
dealing with those that we have, and I think the folks doing the campaign on the ground who are delivering, especially delivered immunization in healthcare facilities, are doing an extraordinary job, and we have to recognize their work.
Follow-up, Shannon?
Yeah, for Dr. Henry, the National Advisory Committee on Immunizations is recommending that racialized Canadians disproportionately affected by COVID-19 and essential workers who can't work virtually be put in priority 2 for vaccines. Is BC considering changing its plan to accommodate this?
No, yes and no. These are important considerations, and we've had ongoing discussions with NACI and with my colleagues across the country. And I think what they're trying to reflect, which we absolutely agree with, is that some populations are differentially affected by COVID and by the measures that we've put in place to deal with it. And many of them come from racialized communities where access to health services is less than others, where workplaces may be less able to support people, so lower wage places where you may not have a sick leave, for example, and we know that that's an impact on communities around BC as well. So what we are focusing on is making sure that we can monitor who's being immunized and address those populations who are not equally accessing vaccine at the same time. So if we look at our priority population are people in the community over age 80, and we will be monitoring to see if we're getting people from all communities over age 80 to receive vaccine, and doing special targeted programs if we are finding that some communities are falling off or are not accessing vaccines because of the way our system is set up. So that is something we're very mindful of, and we will be considering. I will also say that, when we look at some of the populations we're talking about, some of the people we're talking about, many of them work in our healthcare system, our care aides and the staff who work in long-term care homes. Many of them belong to racialized communities who are differentially affected. So making sure that we meet their needs answer their questions, make sure that people are comfortable and understand
他也是说到
the
了这个
implications of
80岁以
receiving
上的老年人
vaccine
这个
and
检
do
疫
it
阶
in a
段，
way
以
that's
及
safe for them is a
长期
top
护理院
priority
里边
for
的
us.
员工、
So
职
I don't
工、
think
职
they're
员
mutually
以及
exclusive. They're not
战斗在第一
a
线
separate
的
group.
医护
What
人
we're
员
trying to
这
do
些
is
公卫系
ensure
统
with
工作人
every
员
priority
也要给他们保
population
证足够的
that
安全，
receives
除了疫
immunization,
苗以外
that we're doing
还要
it
给
in a
他
way
们足
that's,
够的
that
支持
increases
这
equity.
个也是我们
challenging, of
制
course,
定
but we'll be
疫苗计
continuing to
划的
monitor
重
that
点的人群，
carefully.
也是给他们
The
这
one
也
other
是
thing I will say is,
始终坚
you
持
know, we have other
始
vaccines
终
that
在
are on
监
the
测他们这个人
horizon.
群。
AstraZeneca is in for review, as is Novavax and Johnson & Johnson
我们现在也
vaccines.
在看
And
其
these
他
are all
的
ones
疫
that
苗，
are
包括
much
阿斯利
easier
康
to use and，
包
that
括
they're
强
fridge
生
stable. So
疫
we
苗
can target
都是要
people
用
who
到
aren't
这
able
个
to
冰
work
箱
from home, people who are essential workers, whether it's police or fire services or
包括了救
education
火队员
workers,
包
people
括
who work in our
这个
grocery
教职员
stores
工
and other places.
包括
So
这
we
个
are
grocery
very
store 的
conscious of that
这
as
些
well, and
他
are
们
looking at
也要
how
有
we
意
can
识
target
他们除了
populations
这
to
个
bring everybody's
安全的意识以外，
immunization
我们
up
也是给他们
as we
重
receive
点的
vaccine.
要
But
让
of
他
course,
们
none
先
of
建
those
立
are
起
approved
免
for
疫系
use
统
yet in Canada.
Next question is from Marcella
因为
Bernardo.
现
It's
在这
11:30.
些疫苗还没被加拿大联邦批
Thank you,
准，
everyone.
现在只有2例，
Dr.
一个是
Henry,
莫德纳，
I was hoping to ask
一个
you
是
that
辉瑞。
You touched on this a bit today, but with dozens more school exposures reported in recent days, how concerned are you that public safety orders are not being followed by families that are still allowing sleepovers in their homes or teenagers hosting Super Bowl parties, further increasing the risk of this virus spreading inside a school environment?
那么他说，最近
Yeah,
几
and
天
you know,
学
these
校
are
的
the
爆发
things
情
that,
况
that
增
we
长
are
很
concerned
多
about.
那么
Particularly,
现
we
在你们
know in
如
the
何
Fraser Health
叮
region
嘱
and
他们
Vancouver Coastal,
他
the
们有
Lower
些孩子
Mainland,
还
but also
sleepover
other
等等
places。
那么
that
他
we
说
are
我们沿
seeing
岸地区、地陆平
exposures that
原
are
这个卫
happening.
生地
About
区都是
40%
看
of
到
them
我们
from
看
what
到
we're
了
seeing are from social gatherings. Social gatherings that should not be happening
还
right
是这
now.
个社交
This is
这
what
个
the
团
message
聚
we're
不
trying to
能
put
不
out there.
能
It
不允
has
许的，
implications.
现在是
Even
绝
though
对
you
不允许的，
think
什么
that you're not
sleepover
at
等等
risk
不。
or your family's not at risk.
这
We
个
know that
都是把自己的
that
家
these
庭、把
types
社
of
区
events,
置
we
于
know
风
of
险之
a
中。
games night where there was 50
特
people
别
in
是
an establishment that should not have been having a games night, and that
有
15
一个比
people
赛
from
日
that,
说没有可
that
以容
event,
纳50个
which
人因
is
为我们的
against
禁令是
orders,
50个人，但是你这
became
个家庭
infected and
你
spread
容
to
不下
several
50个人，
workplaces,
你还
to
去容下
schools,
10个人
and
，10
to
个
a
人都
childcare
多了，
center.
所以这
So
个
these things are what we all need to hold each other to
所以我
account.
们现在都
You know,
希望
we
大家
in
都
public
能够
health
负起责任
cannot
来，
be in
每个人都
everywhere.
是
We
自己
can't be
负
in
起责任来。
every pub or restaurant or business or every place all at the
包
same
括这
time.
个
We
酒
need
吧
to
啊、
hold each
餐
other
厅啊
accountable
等
right
等
now
都
for
是要负起
stopping
责任
the，spread,
希望大
because
家
that's
能够
what's going
停
to get us
止
into
病
the
毒的
spring
传播。
where we have enough vaccine to protect
我们现在
people.
还没有
And
足够的疫苗来保
what
护
we're
每一
seeing
个
in
人。
schools right now
我们现在学
reflects
校
the
里边看
transmission
到
that we're
也
seeing
学
in
校里
our
的情况
families
就
and
是
our
反映
communities.
社区里边大家的
Follow up, Marcella?
这个情况。带到学校里去，
I'm
说
kind
实
of
话，就
sorry
是
that I
你家
have to
庭里
ask
边
this next
你去
question,
搞
but
社
it
交
is,
你去
about an order of
这
a
个
local
酒吧
comedy club that
就
says
这个
British
情况
Columbians
就会
could
带到
use a
学校里
laugh
去
more。than
学校
ever
里
right
边
now, and
这个
if
情况
restaurants
就
and
真
bars
真
are
实实
allowed
的
to
反映
operate,
了这
so
个
should
家庭
comedy
在社
clubs.
区里
So
边
if
的活动。
venues like comedy clubs and theaters updated their COVID safety plans, how soon do you think you could consider letting them reopen?
那么
You know,
包括
there's
影院啊，
things
包
that
括
are
这个酒吧什么
that
情况
there-
条件下，你才考虑让
The
他
short
们
answer
重新
is
开放
right now
现
we're
在
still seeing too
短
much
长话短说，
transmission,
现在
and
没有
no, I
没有考虑，没
absolutely
有
agree.
我们现在
We
还
could
看到
all
了很
use a
多的
laugh.
传
We
播
can
在
all
做
use some joy in our
我
life
们
every day.
每个人都喜
But
欢
it
笑，
doesn't mean
每
we
个人
have
喜
to
欢
go
享
to a
受生
comedy
活
club, and we
但是
have
这
seen
个
where
不 允
people
许，
think they're
因
doing
为现在
okay
还看
and
到了
it's
太
just a
多的
little bit
传
of
染病例。
a stretch and we're not really breaking the rules too much, that we see spread of this virus and it gets into our communities and it gets transmitted in workplaces, it gets transmitted in schools. We see people ending up in hospital and we see the effects of that.
我
So
们都看
now
到了
is
还有人
not
住
the
院，还有
time
孩子
to be
们在生
increasing
病
our social
还有
interactions
看到
and
了学
social
校里边的
gatherings,
传播，
and it's
所以
not
这个
the
现在
time
还
for
是
those
在
types of
社
events.
交里边传播，还是在增长
April Lawrence,
还是在
check
发生，所以现在不考虑，长话短说，不考
Oh,
虑。
hi, thank you so much. Dr. Henry, due to outbreaks at Nanaimo long-term care homes,
那么南大一国
families
的
there
长期护
are
理
pushing
院
to
有一
know
个爆
whether
发
all
这
staff
个是
members
今
in the
天说的
facility
三
are working
个长
closely
期
with
护理院
patients.
那么也有记者问，你们既然那么多职员老人都打了疫苗，怎么还会有发生？那么 Bonnie Henry 说了，这些发生都是在打之前或者打之后，因为打了之后也2个礼拜以后才会建立起防线，所以
staff immunization rates by facility, so you'll know. Nobody has a right to know an individual's immunization status, and that's something that's important for all of us in terms of our own protection.
他说没有一个人有权利去知道哪一个人打没打过这个 Bonnie Henry 我跟踪下来呢，他也是属于这个应该说是民主党、自由党这一派，比较左的，比较崇尚自由，比较崇尚个人隐私的这个包括今天他说到了没有人能够全力知道你有没有打过疫苗。我们在中国我们早就说我打过疫苗了，早就给全世界宣布了，所以这个还是文化的问题。
While it is still important, and we will be targeting, there's very few, but there are a few care homes where not everybody, not all the staff are immunized, and what we need to do is make sure we understand why, and we give more opportunities for people to receive the vaccine and receive the information they need to be comfortable receiving the vaccine.
所以他也是说到了，就算你要接种疫苗，也要让自己觉得舒服再去做这个疫苗不是就是自愿的，不是说强迫的。
Still, we know that 1 or 2 cases can happen even when everybody's been immunized.
Follow-up, April?
Yeah, thank you. And I know you've been talking about the shortage of vaccine, but I was wondering if you could tell me when second doses might be rolled out in these two particular facilities, and whether you're giving any priority for those second doses to long-term care homes that are experiencing outbreaks.
Yeah, so we did initial immunizations in care homes that were experiencing outbreaks as a way of protecting the second generation as best we could, not always successfully depending on the timing. But yes, the residents in particular of care homes are people that we want to get the second dose in this timely way as we can. Some of the care homes that were done later are not yet at the minimum period, so that's something to consider as well. But we are looking at it's less important for younger people, more important for us to protect older people.
我们主要还是保护老年人很快的保护这些老年人因为年纪轻的人的对这个病毒的抵抗还是比较的确是这样
long-term care residents and staff have been immunized.
他说，目前为止，63000个长期护理院的职工和居民已经打了疫苗。那么其中呢，16000多个人已经打了第2针，包括了还有4826个人是指定的探访者也打了疫苗。这个是新的数据。今天的这个 Bonnie Henry 给了一个数据大概大家也是我们 BC 省观测下来，这个打了针3周以后，老年人特别是长期护理院3周以后，在老年人身上这个疫苗的保护率、有效率达到89%到90%，这个消息他说是比较令人鼓舞的。
And obviously there's approximately 30,000 residents in long-term care, so you can see the extent of the immunization across the province.
We have time for one more question. For everyone listening, Dr. Henry and Minister Dix will release a statement this afternoon with the latest information on cases, hospitalizations, and outbreaks, which you can find at news.gov.bc.ca. For updated province-wide restrictions, visit gov.bc.ca/COVID restrictions. And for information about the province's orders and pandemic supports, visit gov.bc.ca/COVID-19. Last question is from Zara Premji, CBC. Are you there, Zara?
基本上就
Okay, we will move on to Dominique Levesque, CBC Radio Canada.
又是要有法语了，来自魁北克的。 不是所有的网友啊、听众都观众都是一开始收看我们的节目。过去的4天，周五到周六是452新增，周五到周六是452，周六到周日是431。
What percentage of COVID positive samples are being sequenced right now? And
他是问的这个基因检测序列百分比是多少？我们的容量是多少？这个都是提过的。他说，简短回答，我们有这个，我们可以加快这个基因检测，加多。所有对这个阳性病例做一些基因检测，我们可以加快、加多这个基因检测。5天，一般5天一个周期，是3099例的阳性案例，我收集的样本，我们去做了基因检测，从1月份到现在为止，1月30号到2月5号，我们才发觉4例这个是变异体，但是我们持续在做这个基因检测、基因测序啊。
But I know we're doing the marker and trying to get up to doing as many of.
当然了，他也是说到了，我们也是尽量能够多做测序就多做测序，我们也是在筛查那些。总体而言，一般10%的样本在做基因测序，在BC省10%。
Yes, I do. Thank you. What's known, and I know it's early, but so far what's known about the variant first identified in Nigeria, and
那么他也说到了第一例的尼日利亚变异体。
Mentioned one of our cases, or the only one last Friday.
上周五说的是发现了1例。
In the UK and elsewhere, so what's your concern about it?
那么你的焦虑是什么？
So one of the things that the lab folk look at is there something about the mutation that gives that strain of the virus or that variant increased ability to transmit, cause more severe disease, or be more virulent, or interfere with the ability of tests to pick it up, or the vaccine to work? So those are things that now have been associated with a couple of different known mutations. One of the ones that seems to be the most concerning is about transmission, and increased transmissibility has been linked with a variant that's called 501Y. So this one that we picked up, 535, does not have the 501Y mutation, but it has a couple of others that are, and I don't have it in front of me written down, but there's a couple of other mutations that are also seen in things like the variant we saw from the UK, the 117, that may be linked with increased transmissibility. So we've seen lots of different slight mutations in the viruses that we found here in BC and across the country, but not all of them give the virus any advantage that makes it more likely to sort of take over. But there's some that are, and one of the mutations that this variant that was originally associated with Nigeria has is one that is of concern. So that's why our lab folk have decided to include it in the ones that we monitor for.
That's all the time we have for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
好，那么他们今天的就是到这儿结束。我给大家再复述一下，这个过去的4天新增案例的数字，周五到周六是452，周六到周日是431，逐步下降。周日到周一是348，周一到周二302例。4天一共1533例，总数 BC 省到现在为止是74283例。各个卫生局的分布情况是：沿岸卫生局是4天新增392例，飞沙卫生局4天新增856例，岛上卫生局新增4天是58例，内陆卫生局4天新增92例。北部卫生局4天新增135例，其中还包括了6例这个疑似病例。 那么目前为止，全省记录在案在活跃的案子是4189例，住院231个，但是重症监护略有上升到了74了。过去4天很遗憾死亡26例，把我们 BC 省总数死于新冠相关的是1314例了。到目前为止已经打过疫苗的 BC 省省民有171755个，其中超过22000个打了第2剂。好了，各位观众，今天 BC 省的新冠疫情的最新新闻简报就给大家直播到这儿，我们本周五同一时间再会。